The airport buzzed with its usual chaos. Families hauling oversized suitcases, business travelers glued to their phones, and kids darting between lines of weary parents. The sharp click of polished dress, shoes echoed against the gleaming tile floor as Colonel Matthew Lawson stepped inside, his military uniform pristine, his chest heavy with ribbons and medals. But the real weight wasn't on his uniform. It was the casket waiting on the tarmac, draped in the American flag. Private First Class Ryan Mitchell, 21 years old. Gone too soon. Colonel Lawson adjusted his cap and took a deep breath. This wasn't just another assignment. It was a duty, a promise made to every soldier who never made it home. No one gets left behind. He approached the airline counter, his military orders and ID in hand. The woman behind the desk barely glanced up as she typed into the computer, her brow furrowing slightly before she finally made eye contact. It was subtle, just a flicker, but Lawson noticed. He'd seen that look before. "Sir, can I see that again?" Her voice was tight. Lawson slid the documents back over, his eyes steady. She hesitated a beat too long, glanced sideways at her coworker, and then leaned in, whispering something. The other agent didn't respond, his face a blank canvas, but Lawson could feel it, a shift in the air. The woman returned, her smile brittle. "I'm sorry, sir, but there seems to be an issue with your ticket. We can't allow you to board at this time." Lawson's jaw tensed, but his voice stayed even. "I'm escorting the remains of a fallen soldier. My paperwork is in order." "I understand, sir, but there's a security protocol." "Security protocol?" Lawson interrupted, his tone calm but cold. She faltered, glancing around for help. "It's just policy." Lawson didn't flinch. "What policy?" The line behind him grew restless. People shifted, whispered. Someone coughed, the sound sharp against the growing tension. But Lawson stood his ground. "I'm not leaving without an answer." A supervisor eventually stepped forward, a middle-aged man named Greg Hamilton, with thinning hair and the strained look of someone who'd been in customer service far too long. "Colonel, I apologize for the inconvenience," Hamilton began, his voice soaked in that corporate neutrality that said nothing while pretending to say everything. "But we have policies that—" "There's that word again," Lawson cut in. "Policy. I've escorted soldiers before. There's no policy that prevents me from boarding." Hamilton's polite mask slipped for a fraction of a second before snapping back. "It's a security measure. Nothing personal." "Nothing personal," Lawson echoed, his voice low. "I'm escorting a fallen soldier, and you're blocking me from doing that. Feels personal." The crowd was paying attention now. People were watching, phones subtly raised. One man, older with a weathered face and a U.S. Navy cap pulled low, stepped forward. "Is there an issue with his military clearance?" the man asked, his voice rough but commanding. "No, sir," Hamilton replied, clearly uncomfortable. "Then why is he being denied?" No answer. The crowd wasn't satisfied. The older man, retired Navy Captain Thomas Greer, folded his arms, his presence adding gravity to the moment. "This isn't right." People around them murmured in agreement. Phones went up, no longer subtle. A young woman in a denim jacket, standing a few people back, pulled out her phone and began streaming live. "They're denying a U.S. Army colonel from escorting a fallen soldier home," she narrated, her voice trembling with disbelief. The terminal changed. It was no longer a normal day at the airport. It was something bigger. Hamilton noticed the cameras. "Colonel, please step aside while we sort this out." "No," Lawson said simply. The standoff grew heavier with every passing second. A teenage boy in a hoodie whispered, "This is going to blow up," as he posted the first video clip online. Within minutes, it did. Tweets, Facebook posts, live streams. The hashtag let him fly started trending. The pressure inside the terminal became suffocating. Airline staff huddled in the back, whispering frantically. Hamilton stepped away, pulling out his phone, likely calling higher-ups. The older Navy veteran stepped closer to Lawson. "You handle that with class, Colonel." Lawson nodded once. "It's not about me." "Damn right," Greer muttered. Then, the airport speakers crackled. "Attention passengers, Flight 382 to Denver is currently delayed. We apologize for any inconvenience. No one cared. They were all watching this now. Hamilton returned, but he wasn't alone. This time, a corporate manager in a sleek Navy suit trailed him. Joseph Carter, VP of Operations. He carried the look of someone used to extinguishing PR fires. "Colonel Lawson, there seems to have been a miscommunication," Carter began, his tone overly smooth. "We're resolving this, and we'll have you on your flight shortly." "Miscommunication?" Lawson replied flatly. "Yes, sir. Just an unfortunate mistake." A chorus of disbelief rippled through the crowd. A woman in a red scarf scoffed loudly. "Yeah, right. Only fixed it because we're watching." Lawson ignored Carter's excuses. "If no one was filming, would I still be standing here?" Carter faltered. I can't answer that." "You just did," Lawson replied. The tension broke as a security guard rushed forward, a phone in his hand. "You need to see this." Carter read the screen. His face paled. Major news outlets had picked up the story. The headline was brutal. "Army Colonel denied flight while escorting fallen soldier." Public outrage erupts. The damage was done. Moments later, another man approached. Military. It was Major Alan Beckett from the Department of the Army. His presence was a sledgehammer to the already crumbling situation. "Colonel Lawson, the Pentagon is aware of the situation. A private military flight has been arranged. You and Private Mitchell will not be flying commercial." Carter started to protest, but Beckett silenced him with a glance. "This is no longer in your hands." Lawson didn't argue. He offered Beckett a curt nod before turning back to the crowd. The retired Navy captain raised 2 fingers in a respectful salute. "You did right today, Colonel." "So did you," Lawson replied before walking out, his mission back on track. But for the airline, the real fallout had just begun. News stations ran the footage on a loop. Military advocacy groups condemned the airline. Politicians chimed in. Hashtags evolved from hashtag "let him fly" to hashtag "honor our heroes." Boycott calls trended. The airline stock took a nosedive. A week later, the CEO issued a shaky apology during a press conference, calling the event a deeply regrettable misunderstanding. But it was too late. Lawsuits followed, spearheaded by military groups demanding accountability. Meanwhile, Colonel Lawson completed his mission. Standing by his private first-class Ryan Mitchell was laid to rest. There were no cameras, no social media, just a family saying goodbye to their son. Lawson didn't need the attention. He didn't want it. He wanted respect, not for himself, but for the soldier he brought home. And that was the real fight.